Um, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Giridhar Raghunathan. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Roehampton in the United Kingdom. And the title of my presentation is Dancing the Desire, Queering Indian Classical Dance Compositions to De-Stereotype Sexualities in Performance and Viewing. In the dark, deep woods, the evening time is commencing beautifully. The sun is slowly descending, and the moon is rising up in the sky. The cool breeze sways softly, while the body being caressed by the gentle wind slowly starts becoming lustrous with the moonlight falling on. The buzzing of the bees, the noise of the stream running nearby, the intoxicating fragrance of the wildflowers, all these sensory stimuli heighten the experience of pleasure and longing at the same time. The heart dances in joy, reminiscing memories of intimate encounters of the past, and is eagerly anticipating the arrival of the lover. Meanwhile, a tiny speck of doubt appears. Is my lover going to come here today for sure? I hope all the effort I took to bedeck myself in fine clothing and jewelry is not going to go waste. I hope that my beauty and charm are appreciated tonight, and that this union will be etched in our memories forever. This is an exemplar for the prelude of a traditional 18th century love-themed padam or a varanam composition in the Bharatanatyam repertory. Fast forwarding a few centuries, let us imagine a busy day at a local cafe. Perched on one of the comfortably cushioned chairs is a girl waiting eagerly for her date. Her cappuccino is getting cold, but she is focusing her attention on sending a text message to her lover, sharing the location of the coffee shop while simultaneously chatting with her girlfriends, admitting how nervous she is about the meeting. Although the two settings are separated by about 300 years, and that the communication between the lovers has evolved from sending a talking parrot to a connect through digital media, the underlying subject matter remains the same, and this subject matter can be identified and named as desire. If love is a common emotion shared by the two anecdotal examples mentioned here, then desire is a driving force that acts as a catalyst in these situations. But this inference poses an important question. If desire is the key in both the examples, then is it different from love? If so, do love and desire share any relation at all? Keeping this question in mind, I would now like you to take into a journey of Bharatanatyam and through my research and how I address to answer these questions of desire and love. Arts in general and dance in particular has been excellent medium to engage, present, and challenge desire through performance. Among the numerous styles of world dances, I specifically engage with Bharatanatyam, a dance form that originated in southern India, for my research. I'm a Bharatanatyam performer who has learned the dance form continuously for 16 years in India, my home country. I presented my dance debut at 14 and I became a soloist at 16. I have performed Bharatanatyam professionally as a soloist and as a group dancer in various prestigious venues in India and abroad, including the Rashtrapati Bhavan, the residence of the President of India. I bring my training and experience in the art form into my PhD research in dance studies at the University of Roehampton in the United Kingdom, to examine the performance of gender and sexuality, particularly masculinity, as well as the scope for performing themes of homosexuality within the traditional Bharatanatyam repertory. My research addresses the following questions. How is the gender identity and particularly masculinity of the contemporary male Bharatanatyam dancer perceived, portrayed, and queered in Bharatanatyam dance performance and practice? What are the social and cultural frameworks that influence the performance of gender and sexuality in Bharatanatyam? What is the scope for the male dancer in queering vernacular texts that have escaped the attention of the Indian classical dance canon after the revival of the dance form, and how can a queering of these texts create a more inclusive and integrated community for dance? In the following slides, I'd like to present a brief introduction to Bharatanatyam first of all, and why and how I contend that this style steers my research on performing sexuality both normatively and alternatively through dance. Bharatanatyam is one of the 8 classical dance forms of India. Although it originated in South India, it has borrowed various textual, stylistic, and performative aspects from the East, West, Central, and Northern India, enriching its repertoire to a great extent. Bharatanatyam is popular not only in India but across the world. The precursor of the form, called Sadar, was performed in 1838 for the first time in Europe by female temple dancers at the Adelphi Theatre, London. I will describe a bit about Sadar and its metamorphosis into Bharatanatyam in the next slide. Bharatanatyam is one among the 2 Indian dance forms included in the Imperial Society of Teachers of Dancing in the United Kingdom. The dance technique is taught at schools and universities in India, Singapore, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, and the United States, and several other countries, and it is performed widely in international dance, theatre, and literature festivals at Hindu temples, Christian churches, schools, and colleges. Bharatanatyam uses gesture, movement, and expression. Its most widely presented themes are stories from Hindu mythology and popular culture. Until the 20th century, the dance was primarily called Sadar, and it was performed by female temple uncourt dancers, commonly known as Devadasis. Sadar consisted of an exclusive set of dance pieces which were performed by the Devadasis at Hindu temples and an elaborate repertoire of dance pieces performed at royal courts. By the 20th century, the temple and court repertoire merged and found a new performance venue, the proscenium theatre. Several social, political, and cultural factors led to the evolution of Bharatanatyam from its precursor, Sadar. I will not go into much detail about these factors in this presentation. However, I'd like to speak a little towards the end of this lecture about a prominent role of reshaping the Sadar, which took place in the post-revival era. This reshaping led to several changes in technique, content, and presentation. Also, many male students started learning Bharatanatyam only from the last century, that too after the 1930s, and this is a vital information for this presentation. Bharatanatyam has 3 important components. These constituents are abstract dance movements called nritta, the narrative dance pieces called abhinaya, nritya, and also the act of communication through movement, gesture, and facial expression, which is called as abhinaya. Thus, Bharatanatyam is a highly codified dance which uses 3 different modes, nritta, nritya, and abhinaya, to create and present a performance. Conventionally, the Bharatanatyam repertoire consists of 6 pieces, Alaripu, Jatiswaram, Shabdam, Varnam, Padam, Tilana, where the invocatory and concluding pieces, that is Alaripu, Jatiswaram, and Tilana, focus on the first aspect, which is abstract dance, called Nritta. Shabdam, Varanam, and Padam focus on the second aspect, Nritya. Among these pieces, I would like to specifically draw your attention to the Padam, the piece where the theme is almost always Shringara or erotic love, which refers also to the sentiment of eroticism. Eroticism is expressed in these pieces through the theme of the heroine, that is the dancer, who pines in love for the hero. Right from the traditional Sadar performance of the Devadasi to the present-day Bharatanatyam performance, this hero is usually a Hindu male deity or a king. It is important to note that this central theme of love has been kept intact. However, the mode of expression of love and the gender of the performer who expresses it have both underwent changes, and I will discuss about this in my next slide. Shringhara, or the erotic sentiment, is presented through 2 primary modes, the text, that is the lyrics of the song, and the performance, which broadly includes movement, attire, and emotion. Let us focus on the performance aspect now and discuss the textual aspects later. Within performance, I'd like to particularly draw your attention to how gender dynamics play a crucial role in the expression of the sentiment of love. Today, millions of women and men learn to perform Shringara numbers. So, with respect to gender, the performance of this erotic theme can be broadly classified as men performing erotic love and women performing erotic love. This can be further divided as a male dancer performing his love for a woman or a male dancer performing his love for a man. Likewise, a female dancer performing her love for a man and a female dancer performing her love for a woman would be a parallel classification. A third strand within the male dancer's performance of love for a man can be traced, which involves gynemimesis. Though gynemimesis literally means a male impersonating a female, here I use the term to refer to a male dancer embodying a female protagonist. This can be achieved either using costumes, that is, dressing up like a woman, or adorning women's attire, makeup, etc., or through gestures that suggest or present femininity. I'd like you to retain this element of performance of femininity in your thought, as I use this mode in the piece that I will be showing you as a recorded excerpt at the end. We can clearly see the traditional repertory is steeped in performance of love and desire through the padam. This desire is expressed through 4 modes of performative communication, which I mentioned earlier, called abhinaya. I will elaborate on these modes. However, before that, I'd like to introduce you to the concept of desire and how this global perception of desire positions itself within my research and how it interweaves into the performance practice of Bharatanatyam. According to world-renowned psychotherapist and author Esther Perel, love is a biological need. Desire is more centered on a motivation and drive. Desire is a fundamental human experience that we want to be present in our lives, and when we lose it, we lose an important connection with ourselves. Living without desire is like living without hope or inspiration. Although desire can be understood as the inspiration to love itself, the way it is conceived or perceived differs across cultures. Also, desire does not always have to be a romantic aspiration that involves 2 people. Sometimes desire can be expressed among multiple individuals at once, and at other times it can even be a passion to secure a new job or acquire a better salary. According to queer theorist Sarah Ahmed, in a phenomenological way of understanding, desire is orienting or reorienting the self towards what, that is, an object or space or who, in other words, a person who is being desired. The common feature of all romantic and non-romantic desires is that all desires spring from an individual, the human being. I argue that this conception is a foregrounding of the body, and I would ask you to hold on to the concept of foregrounding as well, specifically with regards to performing desire, as we will look into it later in detail in this paper with regards to Bharatanatyam. Engaging with Indian thought and mode of knowledge production, literature scholar and author Madhavi Menon argues that the perception of desire, according to pre-colonial Indian traditions and literature, is plural, multi-gendered, and multifarious. She justifies by providing a range of examples, both ancient and modern, which are myths and histories from the Indian subcontinent. In her book titled Infinite Variety, A History of Desire in India, published in 2018, Menon devotes a chapter to makeup. Menon begins the chapter with a section from Vatsayana's Kama Sutra, in which the details of how the man should use toiletries and makeup, including the recommendation that he should use a ball of red lac to put on his lipstick, and that he should use a ball of beeswax to keep the lipstick in place, are also mentioned. An illustration of how the woman should do her makeup, clothing, and jewelry is presented by Vatsayana in the Kama Sutra as well. The use of betel leaves for adding color to the lips, coal to darken the eyes, putting a mark on the forehead, and adorning the body with sandalwood paste and rosewater essence are mentioned not only in Vatsayana's famous ancient text on love and courtship. A careful observation will point to us that this is also one of the many forms of narrative representation used by contemporary Bharatanatyam dancers in Shringara-themed pieces such as the Padam. To give a better context, the dancer usually bedecks themselves in jewelry and makeup when in performance, and also within the theme of the performance, when they present a section where the protagonist is waiting for the hero and getting ready for his arrival, they use the technique of making up the face and adorning the costumes and jewelry through a gestural representation and emotive facial expression to convey the idea. This form of representation of the makeup and clothing in performance through gestural representation in Bharatanatyam and also in other Indian classical dance forms can be linked to the significance attributed to makeup and costumes in the Natya Shastra, which informs the vast corpus of drama and performance practices of South and Southeast Asia. According to the Natya Shastra, makeup and costume, which form the Aharya Abhinaya, is one of the four modes of communication, which I call as performative communication, besides other forms of abhinaya such as angika or bodily communication, vachika or vocal communication, and sattvika or the various temperaments and emotional modes of communication used by the dancer. By acknowledging makeup and costumes as one of the methods through which the dance and drama can be communicated by the artist to the audience, the Natya Shastra suggests that the clothing and ornaments have the power to suggest and in turn establish meanings. This suggestion can be carried forward to be put to use in the on-stage and off-stage performance of desire to the beloved. That is, the clothing, the makeup, and the jewelry used by the Bharatanatyam dancer conveys the mood of the particular romantic song which is presented on stage. Now let us revisit the phenomenological understanding of desire, which was described earlier in this talk. From our understanding of desire as an orientation to someone or something, we can infer that the Bharatanatyam performer orients his or her body to a certain mode of makeup or costuming that conveys the mood of the performance. Additionally, the body also orients itself towards certain spaces, that is, moving to or leaving from one space to the other, on the stage through movement. This arrival to and departure from spaces is governed by the elaborate, highly codified movements of the limbs, as well as the movements of the neck, head, torso, eyes, and the facial expressions that accompany these movements. And while performing the movements, the body is established as a site for the production of desire. For example, circling the arms in such a way to depict the embracing of the lover, or turning the torso to the other side, expressing anger or displeasure towards the lover, are commonly used in Bharatanatyam. However, I argue that inasmuch the body provides the scope for the presentation of desire through abhinaya, it also curbs the display of desire by governing and policing the movement through nritta, or the abstract dance sequences, which are expected to be norms, modes, and an already established set of codes. I demonstrate this paradox by presenting to you the example of the birth of Kama, also known as Manmatha, the Hindu god of desire and love. Manmatha and his birth, and also his flower arrows, which are shot on the protagonist, and that creates the sentiment of love and makes the protagonist long for their beloved, is usually a common theme in Bharatanatyam. I specifically choose this example because in Bharatanatyam, desire and agony from the separation from the beloved are presented in an oft-repeated situation in which Kama, the Hindu god of love and desire, strikes his flower arrows at the lovelorn protagonist. A prominent figure in both Indian literature and dance, Kama is referred as Manasija, one who is born out of the mind of the love-stricken person. Also, he is described as being capable of tormenting the mind he is born from. This paradoxical position of the recognition of the multiple desires by attributing it to the manifold productions while concurrently problematizing such productions as a predicament opens intriguing analytical possibilities. Kama is one of the most vibrantly described gods of the Hindu mythology. His birth is described in the Shiva Purana, which is an ancient text. According to the legend, Kama is portrayed as a sporty and haughty god. The sages said to Kama, according to Shiva Purana, since at your nativity you have begun to torment and bedevil our minds, and that of Brahma too, you will be famous in the world as Manmatha, or somebody who churns the mind. Because of his pride, he shoots a flower arrow at Shiva and disturbs his penance. This angers Shiva and he burns Manmatha to ashes by opening his third eye. Manmatha's wife Rati pleads Shiva to bring her husband back to life. Shiva agrees to restore Manmatha's life but informs Rati that he will be visible only to her eyes and henceforth be invisible to the others. And hence he gets the name Ananga, which means the person who does not have limbs. It is very interesting to note that there is this possibility of discussing the god of love and desire and characterizing him without a physical form or without the presence of a torso and limbs, and at the same time describing him as somebody who can be born a million times through desire, which is evoked in the minds and the hearts of the people longing for love, is a very interesting concept which can then be compared with the idea of having Angika or Nritta, which restricts the performance of the movement of the body, as well as Abhinaya, which encourages the performance and let it transcend beyond the confines of the strict movement vocabulary of Bharatanatyam, both present within the form. This very conceptualizing of celebrating desire and also shunning it because of the fact that it torments and disturbs the mind is similar to the paradox of the dancing body, where the dancer's limbs help create movements that describe love at the same time, shape and govern these movements, locate and retain themselves within the boundaries of respectability, codes, morality, and the confines of conservatism is an interesting paradox. While Nritta or abstract dance dictates movement, I argue that the pieces steered by Satvika Abhinaya, such as Padam, Javali, Ashtapadi, create the scope for communicating beyond the already established morally codified confines. According to performance scholar Matthew Allen, the all-encompassing definition of Padam is that it is a love poem. Padam refers to a musical genre and a dance piece in the 7-part Bharatanatyam repertory, which has held an unquestioned spot since the first half of the 19th century. It is performed as the 5th or sometimes the 6th item in the Bharatanatyam performance as an unhurried number in which the prime significance is given to Mukha Abhinaya or facial expression. The theme of the Padam is Shringara or erotic expressed by the heroine, the protagonist, to her hero, god or king. This makes the Padam a suitable part of the performance of a female dancer by aligning itself with conventional, heteronormative, romantic, and conjugal expectations. I examine the Padam through a queer lens, where I subvert the unchallenge the heteronormative presentation of love between the protagonist and their lover within this traditional repertory piece. I aim to achieve this through performative expression by presenting an excerpt of a Padam. This is my original choreography where I present a love poem penned in Tamil language by Subbaram Iyer, a 19th century poet. In this piece, I perform the angst of a woman who inadvertently discovers her lover being enticed by another woman at the riverbank. She is regretful that her lover is not hers anymore, but reminds him of the tender love and courtship between them from the past. The goal of this performance is to perform the female through the male body and to celebrate the fascinating union of different emotions such as anger, jealousy, sorrow in love. Here, I interpret and present this piece as a performance of the erotic by embodying gestures, suggest, or present femininity. This makes a strong case to argue that although Bharatanatyam, up until the previous century, has been the dance form performed and practiced by women, over centuries the form has undergone an evolution which encompassed additions, deletions, modifications, and even appropriations. As we question the role, pertinence, and relevance of gender and sexualities and the need for developing new sensitive and inclusive definitions of these terms, it becomes imperative to apply this understanding in performing arts as well. Although Bharatanatyam comes across as a predominantly conservative medium, it is like most traditions in India, accommodative of the myriad of possibilities within the purview of gender and sexuality. I present a short section of the recorded piece to reiterate this notion with the help of movement.
Thank you so much for your session, Giridhar. So, is there any
Um,
questions? Yeah.
yeah, sorry. I just wanted to share a small video, a small excerpt, and then I would like to conclude my presentation.
Okay, no worries, Giridhar. You can take your time. Yeah.
Sure, thank you.
Yes.
Is it audible? That was just a small excerpt of a performance. And I would like to reiterate through this performance that through the male body of the performer, in this particular piece, a female protagonist is presented. And as I have argued previously in this paper, the form itself opens the scope and gives the possibility to perform these myriad of sexualities using different bodies which acts as the apparatus, as the medium to be able to communicate these different shades of love, both normative as well as alternative. I conclude the paper with an open-ended question. Is the 21st century Bharatanatyam practice a medium that would aspire to push these boundaries? If so, what would be the ways through which the boundaries of sexuality and the representations of it can be pushed? On the contrary, if Bharatanatyam would resist the alteration of the norms, would it read as a conservative medium among the millennials and Gen Z that aspire for liberalism to be the mantra of the future? Thank you very much for your attention. I would equally like to thank the School of Arts, University of Roehampton, Professor Anne David and Dr. Avanti Meduri, my Director of Studies and Supervisor of the research respectively, and Roehampton University Sacred Heart Fund for providing financial assistance for the PhD. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thanks.